when we're focused on ourselves, of course you're going to feel isolated because everything, the focus, the lens, everything is on you, what's not going right, how you feel alone. So when you can look outside and see how you can help others, support others, do something for someone else, you begin to take the focus off yourself and you see things in a new way. You see new opportunities that were always there, but you weren't open to them. And so no matter where you are, if you are feeling depressed, if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling isolated, no matter what level of success you think you've had, the best remedy for that is to focus outside and do something for someone else.
Welcome to the Going North podcast, the podcast where you will be inspired to join the business of immortality known as authorship. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer, member of the Maxwell Leadership Team, and best-selling author of the book, Stay the Course, Dominic Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some tips and techniques to advance yourself coming up next. It's your host, Dom Brightman, coming at you again with another review to highlight left on applepodcast.com. Thanks a bunch to this wonderful person right here. And they left a 5-star review titled, Fun Approach to Podcasts. I love Dom's interviewing approach, and there's a ton of great guests with amazing topics. Thanks a bunch, Misha409, all the way from Canada, for leaving this great review about the wonderful podcast. And if you too have a review you want to leave about the show, feel free to head over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast player, or goingnorthpodcast.com, and we'll be able to read it and highlight it on a future episode. Now let's get on with today's episode. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as GMP, the Great, Glorious, and Glamorous, is the Going North podcast. We got another super special, awesome human that could fit all three of those G's and more, courtesy of a wonderful site known as podmatch.com, where podcast guests get to connect with podcast hosts. And if they're cool, they're freaking in. And today's guest is cooler than 3 cucumbers indeed, because she's a mom, she's a wife, she's a grandmother, as well as a fellow podcast host indeed. And most of all, an ICF Certified Life business coach that supports executives, business owners, and leaders to successfully create a life and career that they don't feel a need to escape from. So let's give it up for Miss KG herself, the kind and glamorous Karen Gray. How you doing today, Karen?
And the crowd went wild. Woo!
Yeah. Right.
Good morning. That's right. Raise the roof. Good morning, Dom. How are you? It's bright and early here in Dallas, Texas. I'm so excited to be here and just talk about all things coaching.
Oh, yeah, that's right indeed. The coach is in. That's right indeed. That's right indeed.
Coach is in the house.
Oh, yeah, that's right. She's in the house. She's with all the homies. That's right indeed. Making sure they at least go 16-1 this year.
Oh my goodness. So I am so excited to be here. And I love that you captured all of the things that I do. I am a mom and a grandmother. I'm a Mimi. That's my official name. But what I love and what I'm passionate about is helping women to absolutely blow the glass ceilings off, have their best life, make their transitions, and just really live a full life so that they get to do everything that they love like I get to do. I think everybody should have that chance. So let's do this, Dom. What do we want to talk about today? Hit me with your best shot, sir.
Don't worry. The best shot involves cupcakes. It's all good. Is my good?
I'm going to be starving. Okay, before we ever got on this call, we were talking about chocolate pie, cheesecake, and now cupcakes. I think Dom's hungry, y'all.
Yeah, that's the disclaimer that I'd never put in the show descriptions. Like, if you're a guest on the show, you will get hungry.
You will get hungry. And if you're listening to this show, be prepared to get snacky. That could be your new moniker, get snacky.
That's right. Get snacky indeed. That's right indeed.
Yeah.
So my goodness, so speaking of snacks, my goodness, it's your first time on the show and first time folks get to hear you on this side of the podcast pod. So my goodness, mind filling in folks a bit on your backstory and how you got to where you are today, Karen?
Wow. So that's a loaded question. So I started coaching just as a accident, honestly. My daughter was competing for pageants and her coach was unexpectedly killed in a car accident. And so I had to step
Ooh.
in
Ooh.
and help and just kind of fill in the gap for her after that tragedy. And what started unexpectedly ended up really revealing something that I was very passionate about, which was helping people feel good about themselves in every situation, but especially those hard pressure situations. And I coached pageant girls for about 8 years. And then those girls started growing up and I coached them on other things. And then people started finding me to coach them for other things. And so I got trained and certified and did all the official business stuff. And the whole time I was a financial advisor and just really began to see life through a new lens where it's like, okay, people who are insecure about themselves also tend to have money issues. So there's this correlation between our money relationship and our relationship with ourself. And just this human dynamic and paradigm of value began to be this underlying current in my business. And so I began to see the opportunity to take the healing that I had personally done and use that experience to help others. And so that became my new brand and my new mission. And so I am, as my little logo up here says, I'm a champion of others. I'm a champion of the human spirit. I want to encourage, uplift, and help others, especially women, because I've been on that journey and I'm a woman myself, shocker. But I just want to help women transcend whatever they believe is impossible to now become possible. So that's a really quick, short version. But today I help executive women primarily because I have been on that journey and really have a great tool of resources to help them. And but occasionally I just have an opportunity to work with men. I also coach a few men that are real estate executives. And so just people that come into my world, if it's the right fit and we both agree that we're on the right path together, then I'm all in to help.
Ah, that's right indeed. She's all in indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. And my goodness, yes indeed, because I remember reading on your one sheet is like what alpha males and alpha females indeed. So you help basically both that are top of their metaphorical
Mhm.
food chain stay on top and
Yeah,
actually work together like people who have some sense.
that's a novel concept, isn't it? I think there's so many things that we can do to sabotage ourselves. And one of the things that I see is people who start scaling in their career, they begin to get isolated because it's no longer safe to have certain conversations in old circles. And so as you begin to scale up, become more successful, sometimes your circle of friends gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller until you feel very alone in that success. And it's almost a counterproductive. It's almost a negative experience when, if you just saw outside that there are new circles you could create and new support that you could have, but utilizing a coach to be that person that you can kind of download all of those things to and let your friends be your friends, it really makes it the best of both worlds. But I definitely see a trend where the more successful someone is, the more notoriety, the more pressure that they feel, the more isolated they feel. So I'm here to help change that.
Hey, you're so right about that. Funny enough, one of our past guests, actually, I think it was even episode 21 back in
Mm,
2020, he mentioned how, like, hey, it's the go to person needing the go to person. Like, who do they go to
yeah,
indeed? Because that
it's so true.
isolation, it's dangerous. So,
Yeah.
definitely good that you're targeting that indeed. So, my goodness. So, what do you think is one of the major, or at least, I guess, a cure in a way. What helps you to help your clients to get out of that isolation? Because that's huge, and folks don't really need to be in isolation like that.
I think it really depends on the person, but the main thing is to get into action for others. When we're focused on ourselves, of course you're going to feel isolated because everything, the focus, the lens, everything is on you, what's not going right, how you feel alone. So when you can look outside and see how you can help others, support others, do something for someone else, you begin to take the focus off yourself and you see things in a new way. You see new opportunities that were always there, but you weren't open to them. And so, no matter where you are, if you are feeling depressed, if you're feeling alone, if you're feeling isolated, no matter what level of success you think you've had, the best remedy for that is to focus outside and do something for someone else.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about indeed. That's what I'm talking about indeed. And I guess the way that's what you're doing now with all the coaching that really happened by surprise, but actually helps you to surprise others of how great they freaking are when they get to tap in to their own goods
That's right.
indeed.
That's
That's
right.
right.
Get them tapped in, tuned in, and turned on.
Ah, that's right indeed. Turned on indeed. So my goodness, so with coaching, I'm sure there have been clients that have made you a better coach. What would you consider your major lesson learned from your coaching clients that helped you to become a better
Wow.
coach?
Wow. I think one of the greatest opportunities I had, I did a time where I coached internally for a real estate company. Sorry, real estate coaching company, I should say. And one of the things that I learned is regardless of the level of success, the level of notoriety, celebrity status, doesn't matter the level of money that you have, people are people. And so one of the greatest lessons I learned, and I also learned this with my daughter, coaching my daughter, because she was in the pageant world, but it was the rodeo queen pageant world. And so coaching those girls, they were in front of celebrities all the time, celebrity rodeo stars, rodeo competitors. At the rodeos, there would be concerts. So we were in front of, music artists, top name. And you really got to see people are people. We say it, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time, but it's true. We're just this human race. And so when you see things through that lens and you just treat people with kindness and respect, and you understand that people are doing the best they can with what they have on that day, some of them get full of themselves, some of them don't treat you kind, but we know that the most people across the board, the people who hurt people are hurting themselves. And so when you take away that offense and you just treat them as someone who's hurting and they're just a person, and you stop judging and stop looking at it as in what you did to me, it's just me looking in to say you're a hurt person who's just a person, not better, not worse, not grander, not less than. It just normalizes things and you can just be present for them. And that's probably one of the greatest gifts that I was ever given, is to just see people as humans that are just doing the best they can. And sometimes they're hurting. And in that process, they hurt you. So it's a little bit of humility, goes a long way.
Ah, that's right. It goes longer than three wiener dogs, y'all. It goes a long way. That's right indeed. That's
That was quick. I caught that though. I caught that.
right.
You're full of funny puns. This is amazing. I don't know if y'all watch this show all the time. You've got to think about all the little innuendos that he throws out. Just he's quick. He's quickety.
Well, what can I say? When we got walking Christmas presents like you coming on the show, it's freaking easy.
Christmas present. I love being referred to as a Christmas present. The gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, that's right indeed. That's right indeed. And yeah, you're definitely so right about the humility piece too, because it's so true. Because Like, heck, sometimes we may, especially high performing folks, we can sometimes
Oh God.
fall into the trap of believing our own hype. And that's
Right?
usually where the damage really starts to get dealt.
You know what? I think a lot of times that ego or that bravado that comes across really comes from a place of protection. There's probably a level of insecurity. And so we're presenting ourselves as what we want to be. So sometimes the most arrogant, most egotistical people truly are super insecure. They're covering up. Now, there are those who are just narcissistic and they're just ego driven. They really have bought their own bullshit, but most aren't that way. So, most people who are super projecting this egotistical, I'm better than you, it's really from a place of protection because I don't want you to judge me. I want you to think I'm better than I am because I don't feel like I am. So I have to make you believe it, which is not what one would assume about that person. But when you really get down to it, I found that over and over and over again to be the case that the most confident people are really just the ones that just show up and they don't have to tell you who they are because they show you who they are. They just live it.
That's true. That's right. When they show it to you, believe them. That's right
That's
indeed.
right.
Right
When people
indeed.
show you who they are, believe them. You just have to pay attention to them. Really look for the red flags and the lessons in it, but without judgment because people are just doing the best they can.
That's right. That's right. So if you see him coming with a propeller hat, don't worry about it. Just saying.
With the what?
A propeller hat.
Oh, yeah. If you see somebody come with a propeller head, I would make a hard right. Like just exit stage right. Whatever's going on, it doesn't matter. Stage right. There's something missing right there.
Well, speaking of propelling, you
Uh,
decided to propel yourself into the biz of immortality with this book, Manifesting Queen. That's right, date.
yes.
Apparently, the 11/11 edition. So, what helped you decide to finally decide, I'm going to take the route and become a author? That's right, indeed. Join a multi-author book. Join the party. What made you
That was
decide to make
a
that decision?
that was a fun experience. So I grew up very, I don't know how to say this. So I grew up in a boxed religion. So I'm not gonna identify what faith that was, not relevant here, but really seeing that God had to fit in a box is what I mean by that, a boxed religion. That God looked like this, he only looked like this, and that's all he could be. And so you had to fit inside that box. And what I learned through my coaching journey and just life, my own life experience with my son, who was born severely premature, and everybody told us he wouldn't make it. He was 12 ounces when he was born. And from that to other experiences, I've learned that God doesn't fit in a box. And it doesn't matter what name you call him, he still exists. It's still about the relationship and it's about who he is to me. And so when I began to see it that way, I began to hear him more and knew that the things that I knew to be true were true. And when I used the power that you can call it manifesting, sowing and reaping, the power of the heart, the law of the harvest. I mean, there's so many different ways to call it, but this book, they call it manifesting. But when I began to look at it from my faith perspective and my spirit perspective, I knew it to be true. That whatever you focus on is what you draw to you. The energy you send out into the world comes back to you. And so when I began to manifest, if you want to call it that, which we do in the book, when I began to manifest what I wanted to happen in a way that aligned with my faith and what I believed to be my relationship with my God, I began to show up differently. And I began to do the work that then manifested the things I wanted. So it wasn't, I'm going to sit here and hope for it and dream about it and put it on the wall and it's just going to be handed in my lap. That's not the manifestation that I believe happens. I believe when you put your mind to something, and this is what I wrote about in the book, when you put your mind to something, you speak it, you call it in, you dream it, you begin to align your actions to that and draw it to you by your words, by your thoughts, by your energy, by your actions, and then God meets you there and meets you there quicker and faster than you could ever do it on your own. And so manifestation is real. I don't care what anybody else says. It is real. I've experienced it and it is powerful.
So
boom, there's your Christmas present.
Just make that 2. You're already the first one.
2 presents. There you go, Dom.
That's right, indeed. That's right, indeed. Because words are powerful too, and you said something very good as aligned action. Because that's the piece that sometimes we fall prey to. It's like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, let me pray for this thing and believe. It's all right, good. So what are you gonna do about it? Nothing. Like,
yeah. What? Yeah. Oh my gosh. Have you heard the joke about the preacher?
Which one about the preacher?
So there's a preacher and it begins to rain and he's going to believe that God's going to save him. Have you heard this joke?
Oh, wow. Okay. This one I'll remember it now.
Okay. So this, let's put this in alignment with manifestation, right? So the preacher's believing that God's going to save him. I'm going to believe that this is going to happen. But he sits there and he's waiting on God. And the floodwaters begin to come in and a police officer comes by and he's like, come on, sir, we need to get you out of here. We need to evacuate. And I'm probably telling my version of this. It's probably off. But he's like, nope, I'm waiting on God. God's going to save me. And then the floodwaters get a little bit higher and a boat comes by and he's like, come on, you need to get out of the house, sir. And he's like, nope, I'm waiting on God. God's going to save me. And then the floodwaters get higher and higher and he's on top of the roof and a helicopter comes by and he's like, sir, we need to evacuate you. And he's like, no, thanks. God's going to save me. The man drowns, goes to heaven. And he's like, God, what happened? You never showed up. And he's like, I sent you a police officer, a boat, and a helicopter. What else do you want? Right? So the moral of that joke is, yes, God met him where he was, and he didn't do the work himself. He didn't see it, he didn't recognize it, and he didn't show up for himself. And that's the same way with manifesting. We're going to believe God's going to do it, but we got to do the work too. I got to show up. If I want to make $1 million in my coaching business, I got to get to work, showing up for people, adding value, helping them, doing the things that God put on my heart to do. And then he brings the right people to me, right? Like whatever it is that he's put on your heart, you got to show up and do the work. It's not going to be handed to you on a silver spoon going, here you go, pumpkin. There you go. There's $1 million business. No, doesn't work like that. So, and who would want it to? Really? Like you just want to be spoon fed the best things in life without earning them? No, I think it's when I believe it, you got to believe it, see it, earn it, and then it shows up. Like that's the best present ever. You value it then. I believe. That's how I feel.
Well, it's a good feeling indeed. It's a good feeling indeed. That's right, indeed. So my goodness, so speaking of manifesting and moving stuff and probably moving mountains, you got this wonderful podcast called the Rock Movers Podcast.
Yes.
So yeah. So my goodness, what led you to start the podcast? Is it like everybody trying to move Dwayne Johnson for some reason?
Moving the rock. Okay, me and Dwayne, we need to have a conversation. No, so the Rock Movers actually got started from one of my speeches that I did. I was doing a presentation And I had some friends in the audience, and we were talking about the bags that we carry in life, right? Like we all were born free of baggage, and somehow along the way, we begin to carry these bags. Think of a rucksack from the military, right? You got this bag, and along the way, things happen to you outside of your control, your own decisions, whatever it is. But imagine that to be a rock that you put in your bag, and you begin to carry that around, and it gets heavy, and life gets hard because you're carrying around these 500 pounds of boulders. And I believe that we can lay that bag down, pull the rocks out, and let's say a rock that I've been carrying in my bag is anger. Maybe I'm angry that something happened to me. Somebody did something unjust. They treated me unfair. It wasn't right. There's nothing I can do about it. It happened. I can't undo that. But I'm looking at this rock, and I can also see the lessons that rock presented. So when I got angry, I learned, okay, some people are going to be mean to me, but perhaps I can see it in a different way and see how it helped me to be more compassionate to others. So I learned compassion by not being given compassion. So this rock of anger, I can lay that down, and I can carry the lesson of compassion. That's much lighter in my bag. And so I'm moving rocks out of my bag and carrying the light lessons. And so as I'm sharing this in my speech and giving this analogy, one of my friends goes, #rock movers. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's my name. And so I became the rock mover, and I was in the process of starting the planning for a podcast. A friend of mine had told me you have to have one. And so that became my podcast, was about how people are moving the rocks out of their bags and helping others do the same with the lessons that they've learned. So basically, how am I paying that forward? How am I helping others? How am I making a difference? And so I have my Rock Movers podcast, and now my brand, I just did a rebrand for my coaching business, and it's now championing the human spirit. So not only just the Rock Movers, which that's still a very deep passion project for me, but now I want to take it to the next level for my executives. And how are we championing ourselves, and how are we championing others? So not just moving things, but I really want to help people be victorious. And so I'm launching another podcast. So I'm going to have two in 2023 called Championing the Human Spirit. So there you go. Another present, Dom.
Be lucky. That's right, indeed. Start
Yeah. So
carrying
how are
God
you
gifts.
moving rocks?
Oh, me, how am I moving rocks? Well, hey, humor is one of my main ways of moving rocks because, hey, get folks to laugh, to get their mind off of reality for a second, and so they can lighten up. Because a lot of folks carry a lot of baggage, as you mentioned
Yeah.
earlier, and if not boulders, and not just in
Boulders,
Colorado either.
huge boulders. We just carry them around, and they're heavy, and they're nasty, and they're ugly, and that, we see them as scars, and we see them as all of these things that are absolutely horrendous. And I really want to encourage and challenge your listeners today to see those rocks as gifts. And I know that that's a huge mindset shift, but Tony Robbins talks about how our greatest losses, our greatest hardships, our greatest moments of desperation, fear, disparity become the things that are pivotal in our life to make us who we were truly called to be in the first place. And so those rocks can be your gifts to make you the better you that you really were created to be. And so when you see it that way, it takes the power away from the rock, and it moves it to the message. it moves it to the power that it transformed. So it's not heavy anymore. That rock's now a gift I can lay down and say, thank you. Thank you for that. That person that was horrendous to me, that person that did unspeakable things to me that I had no say as a child or as a victim or whatever happened, because I don't want to negate the fact that those things were horrible. They truly could be and probably were and are, myself included. I've been through that. I had my own rocks. I was adopted when I was born, and that was a rock I carried for a very long time. And now, today, I see my adoption as the greatest gift I was ever given, because I understand several things. But one thing, my mother chose life. She could have chose something else. That's a gift in and of itself. I now have that relationship with her. I was given two families, so I have double blessed, but also I have an understanding and compassion for that person who has gone through any kind of traumatic loss. But an adoptee often goes through the loss of that primal relationship with their mother, and it creates a vacuum. And so they're constantly looking to please others. They're constantly looking for opportunities to be affirmed and validated and loved and have that heart hole filled. And so I know that that exists. And now I know how to do something about it. And that's really my message with my coaching, is filling in that gap in our heart, that hole in our heart that creates these self-sabotaging actions or choices or destructive behaviors or whatever it is that is those rocks that we're carrying around. And now we can use those messages, the lessons that we've learned, the gifts, to champion others.
Ah, that's what I'm talking about indeed. That's what
Yeah.
I'm talking about indeed. Championing others. That's right indeed. Folks will get their title belt, y'all. That's right indeed. They're gonna get their title belts today. That's right
That's
indeed.
right.
Karen's got you covered.
I got your champion belt.
Yeah, that's right indeed. That's what I'm talking about. So my goodness, so with all that wonderful goodness being double blessed, which is a great feeling indeed, turning pain into power. Heck, even talking with folks who have also probably turned their pain into power. Gotta ask an obligatory question since you're a fellow podcast host, and that is, what are your three greatest lessons learned from starting and running a podcast of your own? And now that you're even going to be launching a second one.
I know, too. What the heck? What am I thinking? My greatest lessons: people's stories are valid. They're valid to them and they're worth sharing. I think that people are amazing, and I love connecting with people that don't look like me so that I can hear their experience and champion it and validate it. And I learned so much from everyone that doesn't have a story like mine, and that I am a massive multitasker. I can do a lot. I can do a lot of hard stuff. And it really just encourages me to give that back to the world. And so I've also learned that I'm a manifesting generator in the human design world, if you've ever heard of that. And I'm meant to do multiple things. And that doesn't mean I'm ADHD and I'm broken. It means that I'm multi passionate and I get to do a lot of good stuff. And so that podcast world has taught me that. It's taught me that I really get to step into rooms, because we can do all this virtually now. I get to step into rooms with people from around the world that I would have never, ever met. I get to share my message and learn theirs, and then take theirs and share it with others. And you get to meet people from my little circles. They get to hear your voice, because I'm going to share this podcast and your message and what you do with my world. So I think it's just the best way to be that go-giver. As one of my favorite people, Bob Berg, says, be a go-giver. How can I make your life better and give more? There's so much good that can come from podcasts, because we don't have to be in the same room to have this conversation. We could just do it virtually. And I just think it's fabulous.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about indeed.
Yep.
That's right Indeed, that's right. Indeed, that is definitely one of the best things about hosting a podcast, especially interview-based podcasts, because you get to learn from
Mhm.
others, get to realize, oh yeah, those stories are
Absolutely.
freaking valid, and you
They
get to
are.
learn about them, and it's like, oh, now I got to be more watchful of certain people in the family in the circles because they might be freaking weird, because they might be doing some
They
stuff.
were. They were the whole time. They were always weird. You just were the same kind of weird and didn't recognize it. But sometimes it's things that we take really hurtful, like we take offense to things that people say. And when you can flip the script in your own mind, you can just see them as people. And you're like, okay, that's just crazy Uncle Al. Like he doesn't mean any harm. He's just doing the best he can. And when you look at his parents and their parents, you're like, okay, that makes a whole lot of sense. This is why he is the way he is. Or sometimes people are just crazy.
Oh
That's
yeah,
true too.
that's right. With the extra cray, that's right, indeed.
Extra
That's right.
cray cray. Double helping a cray.
Ah, there we go. That's right, indeed. That's the hamburger help we don't need.
That's right. Instead of gravy, it's cravy. The hamburger helper with the extra gravy. Telling you, the food comments go on. If you're not hungry by now, you haven't been listening.
You're welcome back on this show anytime.
I I think we need to book it now. Like we just need to hang out. Again, Pod Match, thank you for connecting us and just podcast. Such a great format to be introduced to people that you wouldn't have had the opportunity to. And now both of our circles get to hear all of this foodie goodness and hopefully take away some rocks out of their bags from this message.
Heck yeah. You don't want to have a Prada purse and put nothing but rocks in it.
You know what? I actually did a photo shoot and it was a Louis, not a Prada, but I did a photo shoot with a trash bag because that's we carry around a bunch of trash in our head and a Louis. And it's like, which one do you want to carry around? This Louis that's valuable that carries, light stuff, or this trash bag that's full of junk and it's heavy. And when you have that visual depiction, it's like, heck no, I'll carry a Louis every day. But you have to make that choice because that Louis can't carry the rocks. And if you're carrying around the rocks, you don't get the Louis. So
Yeah, exactly.
there you go.
That's right, indeed. How can you rock a Louis with rocks?
But and the hits keep on coming. Oh, Dom, so much fun. So much fun.
So my goodness, so since you've been on a boatload of podcasts, is there a question that folks should ask you more often, or a question you wish folks would ask you more often?
Wow, that's a good one. So I think one of my favorite questions that I get that I was asked in a podcast was something that people wouldn't know about me from my bio. And that gives me an opportunity to either share about my adoption if I haven't already, or the fact that I grew up on an Indian reservation. So you would not look at me and think that.
Nope.
See, I knew it. But I did. My dad, my adopted family, worked in New Mexico for the gas company. And so when I was adopted, they were living in New Mexico out on the Hickory Apache reservation. And they were living in a company camp, but it was on the reservation. And so I grew up in Largo Canyon, New Mexico, in a company camp on the Hickory Apache. And then about 6, we moved to the Navajo reservation to another camp. And I grew up riding motorcycles out in the canyon, finding pottery, chased a few goat herds around and sheep herds, which I got in trouble for, and climbing Indian ruins that were out in the canyon. I mean, it was a fabulous way to grow up because each community, each little camp was like a little village. And so I had, 50 parents and There was probably 80 brothers and sisters out there, which, you fought like brothers and sisters. One day you're best friends, the next day you're hating each other. It was a fantastic way to grow up. You really had to rely on each other because the first place we lived was 80 miles from the nearest town. And so you really create this sense of community. And our community was very diverse. There were all faiths. The church that we had out there, one weekend would be a Baptist preacher. The next weekend was a Jewish preacher. The next weekend, like, it didn't matter. It was just who was traveling through the area. And so I got exposed to so much people that didn't look like me. And so I grew up in an environment that was very diverse. And I know sometimes it's offensive when people say, or when people hear someone that looks like me say, I don't see color, but I grew up in an environment that wasn't about color. It wasn't about race. It wasn't about where you were from. At my kitchen table on Thanksgiving or Christmas or holidays, we had every color because people that didn't have a family and have their own holidays, they came to our house. And so my parents were just very welcoming and very open. And, looking back through the eyes of an adult, I can look and see there were Mexican Americans, and there were Spanish people, and there were Black people, and there were Indians, different tribes, and there were Irish people and Scottish people. And like, it was such a melting pot, and everybody was just laughing and having fun and eating the same food. And they were all telling stories about work, and they were just a family. They were a work family that became a community family. And that was my community that I grew up in. And I didn't know any different until I grew up to be an adult and moved out and moved to the South in Florida. And it was like, oh, okay, this is racism. I get this. And so it was a very, very different experience than what I grew up with in New Mexico. My school was very diverse. A third Navajo, a third Hispanic, and a third white. So diversity looked different to me as a kid growing up and through those eyes. And I just see people as people. And I think that's been a huge blessing in my life, is to have that experience as a child, to see parents that were so welcoming, that we never discussed race. It wasn't that. It was, what does that person need from us? How can we help as a family? Do they need a place to stay? Do they need a meal? Do they need help with vehicles? Like my parents were consummate givers. And so I learned that. And that was a big gift growing up. And that's not something people would know looking at me or looking at my resume or looking at my website. They would just see me. And so I think that's the greatest gift, is we never know what someone's journey is, what their experiences are, or what their heart is. And so I just ask people not to judge because I look like this. Get to know my heart first.
That's right, folks. That's right, indeed. Keep the gavel in the pocket, y'all. Don't put it in your hand. Don't do it. That's right,
That's
indeed.
right.
That's right,
Drop
indeed.
it. Drop the gavel.
That's right. That's right, indeed. That's right. That's right. Keep the gavel at bay, y'all. That's right. Drop it. It's a hot gavel. Just drop it.
That's right. Let it go. Just let it, like Frozen. Let it go. Let it go. That's what that Frozen girl's talking about. Let go. Let go of the hate. Let go of the racism. Let go of the judgment. Let go of the pain. Just let it all go. It doesn't matter anymore. Just be yourself and love. Lead with love all the time.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, indeed.
Because
And
if you don't,
definitely.
you're going to miss out on the cheesecake conversations. And the hamburger helper conversation. Oh.
I could tell the mind control is working. Well, since you mentioned food again, coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive now since last November, and that is, if the book Manifesting Queen, if it was a food, what would it be and why?
It would be an ice cream sundae with all the sprinkles. And the sprinkles are the gifts and the lessons. And the sundae is the manifesting message. And of course, the bowl is the book and the message that, or the way that the book is displayed, but there's a few nuts mixed in. You know what those are.
Yeah, probably me. Let me stop.
Oh, I knew you would fall for that one. I knew it. Oh, Dom, you have been such a pleasure. I have loved being on this interview. And I think I'm going to be switching up my interview style because you have taught me a few things today, sir. Talk about more food, more food. Relate it back to food. It's all about the food. Everybody relates to food. It just brings in a common ground.
Yeah, it literally does. It
It does.
literally does.
It
Well,
does.
before
It's
you make
been
a
my
run,
pleasure.
before you make a run for it, coming down to the actual question folks get to receive. So if you wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but you're still in the current year with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Oh my gosh. Be more kind to yourself. Talk more kind to yourself. Trust yourself more. I hadn't learned all of the lessons that I have now, obviously. So at 25, if I knew what I knew now and the power of just believing and being kind and gracious and loving, I would have made I would be able to make more impact because I think I held back so much. The insecurities, all of the things with my adoption really burdened me. And it was such a heavy rock that I carried until my 40s. And so if I knew it then and had healed all of that then, holy smokes, I'd be powerful. And a few more other things. But yeah, I'd be more brave, be more bold, care less about what people think and more about what you think. That would be it.
That's what I'm talking about. Indeed, be bold, y'all. That's right,
Be
indeed. Be
bold.
bold. That's right, indeed. That's right,
Yeah.
indeed. And keep the kindness too. That's right,
Yeah. I think my
indeed.
biggest regrets are the things I didn't do rather than the things I did. And I think that you hear that from everybody. When you're in your final moments, they don't regret the things that they did. They regret the risks they didn't take, the things they didn't do, the people they didn't connect with. It's not about the stuff. It's never about the stuff. The stuff doesn't fill the hole or the void or any of the gaps. People do. So keep people first and make that the priority.
That's what I'm talking about indeed. So heard
Yep,
that right, folks? You got coach's orders. Go out there and do something, dang gummit. That's right indeed. Do
that's
something.
right.
Have less regrets. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Do more good things. Take that positive risk, y'all. That's right. Hashtag positive risk indeed. Not nothing negative. Like do something that'll benefit you, benefit the other folks around you, not
That's
something that'll
right.
make you look stupid.
That's right. So my new motto is to be your own champion and then champion others. So
That's what I'm
that's your
talking.
marching orders for today, Dom. Be your own champion.
So wait, that's right indeed. Got my championship belt ready now. That's right indeed. So for those who need to keep in contact with the champ and help continue to champion others, what's the best way for folks to do so?
So these days, I'm really living over on LinkedIn, but you can find me on any social media feed at Coach Karen Gray. And as you see, it's Gray with an A. So you can find me anywhere, or my website's Coach Karen Gray. So Coach Karen Gray, anywhere, you should be able to find me. And would just love to be a support resource or champion others. Have lots of great content. I have a retreat coming up in 2023. So if you go to my website and follow me, you'll get updates on that. And really just let me know how I can support and love. Always about that.
Yeah, that's right indeed. We all know why it's an A instead of an E in Gray, because she's angelic, y'all. That's right indeed. She'll get you on that wonderful
There's my
side, y'all.
halo. You can't see it, but there's a halo up there. My horns are holding it up, but it's there.
Someone's got a lucky husband.
Yep.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, my Good to share that, right, folks. Follow the great Special K herself and all the wonderful wares. Be look out for that wonderful retreat. Indeed, that's right. Indeed, get that rejuvenation going. Indeed, help it to go north. Indeed. So, any parting words before we close up shop, Karen?
I just appreciate you. Thank you for this conversation, for reaching out, and for just making this possible, for bringing your light into the world. And with your backdrop, you're bringing a lot of light to the world, Dom.
Hey, you. Yeah, you. The one listening right now. Thanks a bunch for sharing some of your time out of your day to listen to this podcast. To take it to the next level, be sure to share it with someone that you care about and that would get something out of this podcast too. Advance others to advance yourself.